When my father passed away, I thought the worst pain was losing him, but grief has a strange way of peeling back layers, revealing what you never wanted to see. I remember standing in his study, sunlight cutting through the dust, my fingers tracing the edge of his favorite chair. It still smelled faintly of his aftershave. He'd built everything from nothing: our home, his company, the family name. And though I wasn't his biological daughter, he always called me his first success. He used to say, "Family isn't blood, it's loyalty." That line haunted me later. After the funeral, the house was full of polite whispers and clinking glasses. My stepmother, Vanessa, wore black silk and crocodile tears, while her son, Ethan, stood beside her like a prince at a coronation. My father had married Vanessa 10 years ago when I was in college. Ethan was polite then, even charming, but over time his charm calcified into entitlement. He treated Dad's company like his inheritance long before it ever was. A week later, I was invited, no, summoned, to the reading of the will. It felt wrong without Dad there, like a play missing its lead actor. The lawyer, Mr. Reeves, sat at the mahogany table, his thin spectacles glinting as he unfolded the document. I expected the usual, a split of assets, maybe a trust for the grandchildren someday. But when he began reading, the air left the room. Everything, every property, every account, every share was left to Ethan. Not even a mention of my name. My heart pounded so loudly that I almost didn't hear Vanessa's carefully rehearsed gasp. Oh my goodness! He wanted Ethan to take over everything? He did always say you had a business mind, darling. Ethan looked like he'd won a Lifetime Achievement Award. "It's what he wanted," he said, flashing me a sympathetic smile that barely hid his triumph. But something felt wrong. My father was many things: demanding, pragmatic, stubborn, but he was also fair. He believed in earning your place. He wouldn't have left me nothing, not even a word of acknowledgement. And then there was the date. The will had been updated just 1 month before his death, the same month he'd been hospitalized. That night, I couldn't sleep. I pored over every memory, every conversation, searching for signs. And then I remembered. One morning, a week before his last hospital visit, Dad had called me. His voice had been weak, but his words were sharp. "I need you to stop by next week. I've made some updates to my estate. Want your opinion?" But when I tried to visit, Vanessa said he was too tired. That call replayed in my mind until I started shaking. The next morning, I drove to his old office downtown. The staff looked uncomfortable when I walked in, like they'd been told not to talk to me. I didn't care. I went straight to his secretary, Margaret, who'd worked for him for 20 years. She avoided my eyes when I asked about the will, but after a moment, she whispered, "He signed something in the hospital. Vanessa and Ethan were there. Mr. Reeves wasn't." That was my first real clue. I thanked her and left before she could lose her nerve. My father would never have finalized a legal document without his lawyer. Something didn't add up. I called Mr. Reeves that afternoon. "Do you have the original copy of the will?" I asked. He hesitated. "No, your father requested it be handled directly by Vanessa for convenience. She sent me the signed version." That word, "sent," echoed like thunder. My father would never send something so important through someone else. And then another thought struck me. His signature. I'd seen it thousands of times, on birthday cards, contracts, post-it notes. But the one on the will, it had looked slightly off, a little too perfect, too deliberate. I drove to my father's house the next morning, pretending I needed to pick up personal belongings. Vanessa welcomed me with that condescending smile of hers, all politeness and poison. "Of course, dear. Take all the time you need." Ethan was there too, lounging in Dad's old chair, flipping through documents like he owned the place already. "You doing okay, sis?" he asked, feigning sympathy. I ignored him. In Dad's study, I found the desk drawers meticulously organized. Vanessa's touch, not his. But in the bottom drawer, under a stack of old receipts, I found a USB drive labeled Estate Drafts. My heart raced. I slipped it into my pocket before anyone could see. At home, I plugged it into my laptop. Inside were multiple drafts of my father's will, versions dating back 5 years. The most recent draft, saved just 2 months before his death, told a very different story. In that version, he'd split his assets evenly between me and Ethan, with a personal note attached, for Maya, who stood by me when no one else did. My eyes filled with tears. That was his real voice. That was my father. But something else caught my eye. The file's metadata showed it had been edited later by someone else, on a different computer. The editor's name was E. Clark. Ethan. My hands trembled. He'd forged it. He'd changed the will. Still, I needed proof that the signature was fake. I found a handwriting expert online, a woman named Dr. Lydia Hart. I sent her scanned copies of both the signed will and my father's authentic documents. When she called me 3 days later, I could tell from her tone I was right. The signatures don't match, she said. The pen pressure, the stroke speed, they're inconsistent. Whoever did this was imitating his style, but didn't understand the natural rhythm of his hand. It's a forgery. I felt both vindicated and nauseous. My stepbrother had stolen not just money, but my father's last words. I needed one more thing before I could expose them: timing. If I acted too early, they'd bury the evidence. Too late, and the assets would be transferred beyond reach. So I waited for the perfect moment, the formal estate settlement meeting. In the days leading up to it, I played the part. I smiled at Vanessa when she called to check in. I even congratulated Ethan on his success. He didn't suspect a thing. He thought I was defeated. The day of the meeting arrived. The conference room was filled with family, lawyers, and 2 journalists covering high-profile estate cases. Vanessa's idea, of course. She loved publicity, loved being seen as the grieving widow managing her late husband's empire. Mr. Reeves began reading the finalized settlement terms. My chest tightened as he read each line of theft disguised as legality. And then, just as he finished, I stood. "Before we proceed," I said, my voice steady, "I'd like to present some additional documentation." Vanessa's smile faltered. Ethan shifted uncomfortably. I handed Mr. Reeves a folder containing the original drafts and Dr. Hart's report. "These," I continued, "are the authentic documents from my father's files. They show his true intentions and expert proof that the current will was forged." The room went silent. Reeves adjusted his glasses, flipping through the pages. His expression hardened. This is serious," he murmured. Ethan laughed nervously. "That's ridiculous. She's making this up because she's jealous." I looked at him calmly. "Then why does this document show your computer's name in the editing history?" The color drained from his face. Vanessa tried to speak, but Reeves raised a hand. "Mrs. Clark, were you aware of any changes made to this document after your husband's death?" She stammered. I don't recall." "You don't recall," I interrupted, "because you were too busy helping him steal from me." The journalists were already typing furiously. Cameras clicked. Ethan's facade cracked. "You don't know what you're talking about," he shouted, slamming his hand on the table. Reeves turned to him. "Mr. Clark, I'll have to report this to the court. Forgery of a legal document is a felony." The silence that followed was suffocating. Ethan's jaw clenched, and then he fainted. Just like that. His mother gasped, rushing to his side. The room erupted in chaos. I just stood there, watching the empire of lies collapse under its own weight. The legal proceedings took months, but the truth held strong. The court confirmed the forgery, restored my rightful share, and froze Ethan's accounts. Vanessa vanished from town soon after, claiming she needed to recover. I didn't care. I'd already recovered what mattered, my father's honor. The day the ruling came through, I went back to my father's study. The sun streamed through the same window as before. For the first time, it didn't feel empty. I placed the corrected will on his desk and whispered, "You were right, Dad. Family isn't blood. It's loyalty." As I walked out, I felt lighter. Not victorious, but free. Justice wasn't loud. It was quiet, steady, and absolute. And in that silence, I finally heard my father's voice again, not in memory, but in peace. You've just stepped into her revenge side, where every wound finds its justice, and every silence ends with truth. If her story struck a chord, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Your support keeps these stories alive. Another secret waits in the next video. See how her revenge begins.